Well, sales are down dramatically. We're looking at about 19.2% off.
Smaller sedan or even a mid-sized sedan that sits lower gets way better gas mileage.
Raw materials come from, and guess who owns them all? China.
The average car price is now more than $48,000, and buyers are being further squeezed by rising interest rates.
The Toyota RAV4 small SUV is the #1 selling non-truck in the country.
Prices are high for these vehicles. Interest rates are high.
Literally, the supply chain is broken.
The modern era of the automotive industry is one of the most expensive times for personal vehicle ownership. As we have covered in previous videos, vehicle prices have skyrocketed. Insurance rates have increased by almost 26%, auto loan rates have almost more than doubled, we have higher fuel costs, and many other factors, such as increased maintenance costs, are crippling the market.
Repair costs are rising relative to the overall rate of inflation. From November 2013 to November 2023, motor vehicle maintenance and repair increased 4.1% per year, an overall change of 49.8%.
American automakers in particular are in a type of Sorites paradox, which is the idea beginning with a heap of sand and removing one grain of sand at a time. Eventually, it will cease to become a heap. In their case, each grain of sand represents a customer, failure in quality control, durability, reliability, and every other function necessary to keep an automotive business in good standing. The question is, how many more grains of sand does the big three have left? With the data I'm going to present here, I want you to look at it from an objective point of view and resist the urge to make excuses for a brand that you may have loyalty to, and remember, the primary objective for a business is to solve your problem and provide a quality product. If they fail to do that, then they do not deserve your business. American brands have a reputation for being poorly built and not lasting past 100,000 miles, and when that milestone is surpassed, costly repairs are usually expected.
Oh, yeah. Fucking man. There's the valve.
Of course, there are a few exceptions, and sometimes it depends on the owner of the vehicle and how well they maintain the car. But how often do you see people tout that their PT Cruiser has over 200,000 trouble-free miles? Compare that to a Toyota or a Honda, where reaching 200,000 miles is the standard and not the exception. How come American brands are unable or at least unwilling to produce quality vehicles? And are they partially responsible for the rise in popularity of SUVs and crossovers?
General Motors, which was always the bad boy of quality, they did have bad quality. They made, lots of errors. The error wasn't the physical error. The error was the management error of pretending that you weren't making mistakes when you had consumers out there suffering and being arrogant about it. It makes people angry, and when they become angry, they remember that for a very long time. The current GM is not at all, the old GM.
The corporate average fuel economy, also known as CAFE, is a congressional mandate passed in 1975, which was designed to ensure automakers made more fuel-efficient cars and reduced emissions. While on paper, this may sound like a good idea, but in practicality, it is one of the core reasons why the auto industry is in its current state, but it is not the only reason. Unfortunately, these standards have created several negative unintended consequences. To list just a few, the CAFE standards force domestic automakers to pay higher fees, which then gets passed on to the consumer, which in turn forces buyers to keep their less fuel-efficient vehicles longer, which is supposedly what CAFE was designed to combat. Moreover, there is a phenomenon that occurs when someone purchases a more fuel-efficient car. It is what economists call the rebound effect. This refers to the fact that drivers tend to drive more when the price of traveling drops, again negating the point of CAFE. Moreover, in the short term of 1 to 2 years, consumers are estimated to lose $6.5 billion in value from purchasing a new vehicle, even when accounting for improvements to gasoline mileage. After 10 years following the increase, the majority of costs is passed on to consumers, who will lose $24.1 billion. Most of this consumer money that is lost is directly from people who purchase vehicles from the big three. While this may sound like CAFE standards are wholly to blame for this, I actually think we should be analyzing the whole situation. Because how come brands like Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, and other foreign brands are able to dominate the market? According to the Mackinac study, every time there is an increase in MPG standards, foreign brands end up selling more products than the big three. Given Asian automakers' superior ability to increase fuel efficiency and the European automakers' willingness to simply pay the non-compliance fine, CAFE standards serve to increase the sales, market share, and profit of foreign automakers at the expense of the domestic big three automakers. These non-compliance fees are essentially $140 per mile for every MPG that has failed to be met. But the question still remains, why can't the big three compete with foreign manufacturers? Moreover, why is it that vehicles like Toyota Corollas, Camrys, or Honda Accords and Civics still have a strong foothold in the market? When the big three claims nobody wants sedans anymore, this might be at best a half-truth.
Ford cutting sedans, that will be cars, out of its lineup, almost completely.
What's wrong with cars? They don't sell?
That's what's wrong with cars. They don't sell. The public wants space. They want to be able to have freedom. A car has become the definition of restriction.
Sedans used to be the prominent vehicles on the road, as they were cheaper to purchase and got better fuel economy. According to Edmunds.com, they show that the market consists of approximately 20% sedan, while SUVs command 56%, and the trend has only continued to rise. Experts attempt to rationalize why this is happening by claiming it's a convenience factor of being able to hold more stuff, people want to sit higher, people want more comfort, or my favorite,
SUV is reptilian, is a completely a reptilian car, is survival and reproduction. I'm stronger, I'm bigger, I'm more powerful than you. I mean, if you come with a little car and I have a big SUV and we crash, you're going to die and I'm just going to have to clean a little bit my SUV.
Regardless of the reasons, there are three key elements we are forgetting. One, it's more profitable for automakers to sell SUVs, as the process for producing an SUV compared to a sedan is shockingly close, especially with costs. Secondly, the big three understand the CAFE standards better than any of us, and they are using the fact that they can produce bigger vehicles and not pay large of a penalty for poor fuel economy. As the vehicle's footprint increases, the mileage standard the vehicle must meet decreases. Thirdly, and in my opinion most importantly, GM, Ford, and Chrysler put a bad taste in the consumer's mouth in the sedan market. The prices were high, the quality was substandard, and the customer service did them no favors. For example, Chrysler produced some of the worst engines in the small car and sedan segment, such as the 2.7-liter V6 engine. This engine was notorious for accumulating sludge, head gasket failures, and timing chain failures.
This is the one that overheated, guys. This was a brand new, you can still see the Mopar tag on the block where it's on the heads, but we put this engine in about, 6 months ago.
There were even multiple class action lawsuits against Chrysler, to which they were later settled. Unsurprisingly, even after the lawsuits in the early 2000s occurred, Chrysler continued to produce the engine up until 2010. Vehicles affected were the Chrysler Concorde, Sebring, Dodge Intrepid, Stratus, Dodge Charger, Dodge Magnum, Chrysler 300, and Avenger. But what we can't forget, the PT Cruiser and Dodge Neon, which had multiple different engines and all were a total failure. What you are looking at is over a decade of failed sedans by Chrysler. Of course, we can't forget Ford and GM's decades of failed sedans. While we can't list them all, here are a few notable mentions. First, GM's North Star engine. The motor was technically developed by the R&D team at Oldsmobile, which later got a 6-cylinder variant of the North Star called Short Star. In July of 2010, production of the Northstar V8 engine family ceased after a 17-year-long run. The engine, while in development and production, suffered countless problems, including premature oil leaks, premature head gasket failure, mainly due to the torque-to-yield bolts and the head gasket. Over time, the threads in the block can move, causing the bolts to loosen the clamping force on the heads. When the engine gets hot, the bolts can pull up, allowing coolant to enter the firing chamber and causing the engine to run hotter. GM's more modern failure is the 1.4-liter turbo inline-4 Ecotec, which is so bad, it's almost impossible to narrow down specifically what destroys this engine. It ranges from head gasket failure, cracking turbos, premature water pump failure, and countless others. This engine was primarily found in the Chevy Cruzes, Sonics, and Buick Encore. Other models like the Malibu also leave much to be desired, which is also nearing the end of its life cycle, as GM has announced the last one will be made in November 2024. Of course, Ford contributed greatly to the demise of sedans with their EcoBoost engine line that were found in vehicles like the Focus, Fusion, as well as some of their SUVs and crossovers.
Chris says he's had 3 EcoBoost engines brought into his garage in Rochdale, and they've all had the same problem.
This is the cylinder head of an engine. Basically, that's the top half of your engine. What we're finding is they seem to be cracking. I can just see, just there, they seem to be cracking. And we've seen quite a few now that have all cracked in the same place.
Why is that causing the engine to fail?
Well, what we're finding is when it's cracking, it's allowing the coolant of the engine to go into the exhaust system. If it loses all its coolant, the engine will overheat and the engine will eventually fail.
And in 2018, Ford announced they would stop producing sedans. I'm not saying strictly this is why they stopped, but when sales are low and product quality is poor, why would you keep producing these vehicles? But this wasn't always the case with these companies. Throughout their history, they made incredible engines and have since become legends within the automotive industry, with Ford making a serious impact. For example, the Crown Victoria is an iconic American car and is ingrained into our culture as the premier police car, taxi cab, or luxury sedan with models like the Lincoln Town Car. It has formed into an almost cult following because of the reliability and durability of the engine. And I personally have known police officers who have put over 300,000 miles on their Crown Victoria. However, people didn't want to drive a police car or a taxi cab as their daily driver. This was an opportunity Ford completely missed, as they could have refined the engine for better fuel economy, like what Toyota does with their Kaizen method, which means change for better or continuous improvement. Ford could have put a new skeleton on the engine to make it more appealing to a wider audience, thus gaining and retaining the idea that Ford can make reliable sedans. Instead, they chose to reinvent the wheel with horrible engines that the customer ultimately pays for. With the big three ending production of sedans, not only are they cutting out a significant market share, but they are also assuming people will still continue to pay high prices for SUVs. Some auto industry experts believe that the rise in SUVs is a trend. What will happen not if, but when people decide they don't want a larger vehicle anymore? There was a time in America when station wagons dominated the road. Now, spotting a station wagon is like spotting a unicorn, taming it, and then riding it. There's also a psychological factor, that kids do not want to drive the same cars their parents drove. And for full transparency, the thought of driving a 1999 Dodge Caravan or a 95 Lumina makes my skin crawl. So anecdotally, there is some validity to this. My point, and I could be wrong, but I believe that the big three either consciously or unconsciously guided the demise of sedans with their horrible quality to the point where people associate sedans with unreliability. That is, unless it's a foreign brand. And yet, American brands failed miserably in the sedan market and still cannot seem to produce a reliable internal combustion engine. And when they do, they commit self-destruction by adding things like cylinder deactivation. Moreover, they can't even manufacture a decent infotainment system. So logically, they are pivoting to create EVs, the most technologically heavy vehicle on the road, and they are signaling they are going to make sedan EVs. If American automakers want to make a resurgence in the market, not just with sedans, but all cars, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Sometimes looking at the past for the answers is all you need to shape the future. Men are born soft and supple, dead. They are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant. Dead, they are brittle and dry. Thus, whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. The hard and stiff will be broken. The soft and supple will prevail.